How's it going, everybody? Handsome Dan here with episode 4 of the Grand Tournament. We're now at almost a quarter of the maximum 13 games we can play, and things are starting to heat up. If you missed any of the previous episodes and don't want any spoilers, make sure you check out the full playlist, which can be found in the description below. Before we get into the action, let's take a look at the scoreboard to check on where we're at. Right now, Caleb's still in the lead with 2 wins, but Jelly managed to pick up his first win in Game 3. That means that when we go to pick decks, Caleb will choose first, then Jelly, and then Derek and I will blind pick simultaneously. Caleb still has 2 threatening decks left in Ilharg and Golos, so we all need to plan accordingly. Let's go ahead and see what we picked, and check out our starting hands. Caleb will be giving it another shot with Ilharg this game. He was able to get off to a hot start last time, but couldn't quite close out the game fast enough before the whole table turned on him. He'll try to rush out Ilharg again, as this time he mulls to 6, but keeps a Mountain, Ancient Tomb, Blightsteel Colossus, Cold Steel Heart, Terror of Mount Velis, and a Blasphemous Act. Jelly will be going back to Talrand this game as a low-to-the-ground deck that can answer and respond to early threats. His goal is to set the pace with Talrand using cheap counterspells and cantrips to make a Drake army and outvalue the rest of the table. Jelly's also mulling the 6, and he'll keep 3 islands, Foil, High Tide, and Dig Through Time. Derek's also going to be bringing back a previous deck with Toshiro Umezawa. Derek has basically taken it upon himself to be the enforcer against Ilharg, as Murder Tribal is the best deck in the pool to keep the big pig off the table. Derek's starting hand consists of Bajuka Bog, Swamp, Cling to Dust, Corpse Dance, Snuff Out, Jet Medallion, and Torment of Hailfire. After my 3rd loss in a row with Sorolf, I finally decided it might be time to try a new deck, so I'll be bringing out Bruenor Battlehammer. This is an Equipment Voltron deck looking to take advantage of Bruenor's free equip ability to make a big dwarf and smash face. I'll keep a hand with Boros Charm, Sword of Hearth and Home, Chrome Mox, Sunbaked Canyon, Plains, Fighter Class, and Swiftfoot Boots.
What number do you want to be there? 1. 1, 2, 3.
I'm gonna 2, baby. 2. Deuce. You can't draw it up better than that.
I have no words.
Jelly wins the pregame die roll for the 2nd time in a row, which means that Derek's going to be last again, and Jelly's going to be starting us off. Jelly leads off with an island, and then passes. Caleb's going to play an Ancient Tomb as his first land, and then takes 2 damage to tap it, and then cast a Cold Steel Heart, naming red. On my turn, I'll play a Plains, and then cast a Steel Shaper's Gift to tutor for a Batterbone to hand, and then I'll pass. Derek's going to play an early Bajuka Bog, choosing to exile my graveyard as I'm the only one with cards in it. Back to Jelly, who's going to play another island and then pass. Caleb's going to play a Mountain, and then tap mana that doesn't hurt him to cast an Arcane Signet. I'll be playing a Sunbaked Canyon as land for turn, then tap down, losing a life, to cast a Stoneforge Mystic. On ETB, I'll tutor up a Sword of the Animist, and be done after that. For Derek's turn, he'll play a Swamp, and then cast a Jet Medallion. Jelly will continue his trend of only playing lands with a Reliquary Tower, passing after that. Caleb has another Mountain to play, which means it's time to cast Ilharg. He'll take damage to do so, but he has no haste, and so he'll pass. On my turn, I'll play a Handward Battlements, and then play a Chrome Mox, imprinting Fighter Class. I'll then cast Sword of the Animist and equip it to my Stoneforge Mystic. And then, I'll take a risk by swinging at Derek to get a Sword of the Animist trigger. I'll get a Mountain from the trigger, but I'll leave up no blockers. Derek's going to do the exact opposite of me on his turn, and he'll cast his commander, Toshiro Umezawa, and then pass after that. We'll make it 4 in a row for Jelly now, who's going to play an island and then be done after that. That brings us to Caleb, who has Ilharg ready to go. He'll be allowed to go to combat unscathed, which lets him swing Ilharg over at me. On the attack trigger, he'll drop down a Port Razor, sending it at Jelly. Neither of us can block, which will give Caleb a 2nd combat. On Caleb's 2nd combat, he's going to send Ilharg at me again, getting a 2nd trigger. This time, he's going to drop down a Blightsteel Colossus, sending it at Jelly as revenge for Game 3. Realizing that he's about to die, Jelly decides to be altruistic for once and cast Pongify on the Port Razor. He looks to the table for some assistance in return.
And anybody got anything else to help me out? Maybe give me a creature in the land? Alright, I'm dead.
Guess he returned the favor, you know?
Yeah, bang. I mean, I was ready to get banged out.
Caleb has nothing else after murdering Jelly, so it'll be my turn next. I'll try to negotiate with Derek to let me swing my Stoneforge Mystic at him so I can get a safe Sword of the Animus trigger. I'll get a Plains from the trigger, but Derek will choose to block, killing the Mystic. Needing to keep up a blocker for Ilharg, I'll go ahead and cast my commander, Bruenor, and then use his free equip to equip the Sword of the Animist. On Derek's turn, he's just going to miss a land drop and then pass. We're back over to Caleb now, and Derek and I are both in a lot of trouble after seeing that Blightsteel Colossus come down last turn. And so I try to make a deal with Caleb and explain to him that both of our decks are going to need each other's help dealing with Murder Tribal, since Derek's deck can just kill our commanders over and over. Derek's having none of this, and he decides to cast a Snuff Out on Ilharg before combat. Caleb has no other plays after that, and unfortunately has to pass. On my turn, I'll play a Plains and then cast a Sword of Hearthenhome. I'll use the free equip to put it on Bruenor, and swing him over at Derek as a 12-6. Derek doesn't want to have to deal with that, so he's going to try to cast Malicious Affliction to destroy Bruenor. But I'll respond by casting a Boros Charm to make him indestructible. I'll get my Sword of the Animus trigger now, getting a Mountain tapped, and Derek doesn't block. This is going to give me a Sword of Hearthenhome trigger on damage to get a Plains untapped, and I'll choose not to blink Bruenor. On my second main phase, I'll tap down, losing a life from Sunbaked Canyon, and I'll cast a Swiftfoot Boots, and I'll pay to equip it to Bruenor and be done after that. At my end step, Derek's going to go ahead and cast Cling to Dust to exile my Boros Charm and draw a card. Now on to Derek, who's going to do the Murder Tribal Classic of playing a Swamp and then passing. Caleb starts his turn after that and misses a land drop, keeping Ilharg off the table for one more turn. Instead, he'll cast a Dolmen Gate and then pass. With the board state pretty calm, I'll go to my turn and see a window to maybe try to take the game. I'll tap out to cast Aurelia the War Leader, which is going to represent a potential loop if I'm able to connect with Bruenor, who can use the Sword of Hearthenhome to blink Aurelia on damage, allowing me to take an extra combat every time the new Aurelia gets to swing. I attempt to move to combat, and Derek has to take some awkward steps to try to prevent this, casting a Defile to kill Caleb's 8 token, and then using the trigger from Toshiro after the 8 token dies to recast Snuff Out from his graveyard to kill Aurelia. With Aurelia dead, I choose to just swing Bruenor at Derek for 14. He'll choose to cast a Grim Return to get Aurelia back to his side, but he has no choice but to block with Toshiro. After combat, I go ahead and cast Batterbone on my second main phase, which is going to make a Germ token to hold the equipment. At my end step, Derek's going to cast a Vampiric Tutor. On Derek's turn, he's going to draw the card he tutored for, but choose not to cast anything. Instead, he's going to swing Aurelia at Caleb twice, and then he'll pass after that. We're back to Caleb now, who finds a mountain to play, and then he examines the board state. Not wanting to bail Derek out of the situation, he's going to make a deal with me to not attack him on my next turn in exchange for not wiping the board. I accept this deal, and he'll choose to spend all of his mana to recast Ilharg instead. We'll go over to my turn, where I'll start off by playing a Helm of the Host. I'll move to free equip it to Bruenor, and Derek's going to respond now by casting Zot's Will, which requires Caleb and I to sacrifice our creatures with the highest power. This is going to hit Bruenor, who I'll send to the command zone, and Ilharg, who Caleb is going to reluctantly put third from the top of his deck. I'll spend the rest of my turn to recast Bruenor, and then I'll pass. The Zot's Will seems to have been Derek's last trick up his sleeve, as he misses another land drop and he holds up his mana, swinging Aurelia at me twice instead. I can't block, but Derek has nothing else on his turn. With Ilharg still in Caleb's deck, the only thing he can do on his turn is cast Meteor Golem. He considers targeting my equipment, but he opts to ensure instead that Derek can't catch back up and destroys his Jet Medallion. Derek's going to cast Succumb to Temptation in response while he still has the discount, and he'll draw 2 and lose 2. On my turn, I'll play a Great Furnace's land for turn, and then I'll use the free equip from Bruenor to equip Helm of the Host. I'll then equip the Swiftfoot Boots, the Sword of the Animist, and the Sword of Hearthenhome, and go to combat. I'll make a copy of Bruenor, and I'll swing the original Bruenor over at Derek. He's at 24 power, and because he has protection from white, Derek can't block, and therefore he'll die. In the meantime, I'll resolve both my sword triggers, getting a Plains untapped and a Mountain tapped. I'll opt this time to go ahead and bounce Bruenor, and then use my leftover mana to re-equip all the equipment to him. Now we're down to just 1-1 between me and Caleb. It's not looking good for him, but I don't have Trample or Evasion yet, so he's not quite dead. Caleb's going to go ahead and play a Fabled Passage as land for turn, and then play an Angrass Marauders as an additional blocker. On his end step, I'll go ahead and crack my Sunbaked Canyon to draw a card. Back to me, and I'll play a Battlefield Forge as land for turn, and go to free equip the Batterbone, which sadly kills the Germ token. This gives Bruenor lifelink and vigilance, and then I'll cast a Hammer of Nazan, which automatically equips to Bruenor and gives him indestructible. Now I'll go ahead and equip the Helm of the Host, which is going to make a third Bruenor, and I'll swing my team out at Caleb. He'll block the original Bruenor with his Meteor Golem and let the copies through, which saves him from lethal, but also gains me 47 life. After getting my land from the Sword of the Animist, I'll pass. Caleb's down to his last gasp now, so he'll crack his Fabled Passage for a mountain, and then tap down. He'll take double damage from the Ancient Tomb because of Angrass Marauders, and then he'll cast Reforge the Soul in Desperation. Unfortunately, the new hand he draws after the wheel has nothing to help him out of this hole, so he opts to go ahead and scoop it up here. This means that I'll be taking Game 4 of the Grand Tournament. This was definitely a game of fortunate turns for me, and it played out pretty similarly to Game 3. We had a very early death, and Derek's single target removal had to be focused at Caleb to prevent him from going up 3 games. This allowed me to suit up Bruenor to protect him from Derek's later options and slowly take over. I was also able to make some pretty advantageous deals with Caleb to take Derek out, as neither of our decks are well situated to take on Murder Tribal in a 1v1 situation. All of us took a very unnecessary risk early on with Ilharg out on the table, and any one of us could have easily died to the Blightsteel Colossus. Both Derek and Jelly had a chance to kill Ilharg before he ever swung, but they opted to be greedy with their removal. This ended up backfiring for Jelly, who caught a very early 11 infect to the face. Whether taking Jelly out was the right call for Caleb is hard to say, but it certainly wasn't surprising that he wanted to get him back for taking him out in Game 3. Much like the previous game, Derek had the tough task of having to deal with 2 aggressive decks too early in the game. Toshiro really needs more time to establish control of the board, and Derek was having to burn through removal while also missing land drops. With both me and Caleb knowing how hard Derek's deck can be for commander-centric decks to deal with, it was no surprise that we focused on taking him out while he was still weak. As for Caleb, he had another pretty explosive start, but once again having to mull down the 6, his deck was unkind to him and didn't allow him to rebuild timely after getting Ilharg removed early. The first 2 games were easy for Caleb to sneak by unassumingly, but at 2 wins with a very threatening aggro deck, there's very little chance of Caleb going unnoticed for as long as he's playing Ilharg. It'll be tough sledding for Caleb going forward, but we'll see if he can find the right window to make a win happen. One key takeaway from this game, however, is that Caleb had some opportunities to claw his way back after being kicked down so many times. By working with me to take out Derek, he left himself with a more manageable matchup at the end to work his way back up against. Unfortunately, the Hammer and Nazan foiled his plans, but he wasn't too far off from being able to reset the board. With proper threat assessment and good politics, you might not be able to win every game from behind, but you can maybe buy yourself those couple extra turns you need to start the rebuilding process. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the scoreboard. Caleb's still sitting in the lead at 2 wins, but Jelly and I are both now tied at 1 each. Only Derek remains winless so far, so will we see Derek get his first W in the next episode, or will Caleb get that elusive 3rd win? Let us know what you think in the comments, and feel free to like and subscribe if you want to get notified when the next episode's out. But that's going to be it for episode 4, so stay tuned for the next episode. As always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.